So, what might be this strategy? Now, to tell about strategy, uh, it has been borrowed from military, and borrowing the concept from the field of military, they have adopted it to be used in business world. So, now before starting up what strategy is, it becomes important that we shall understand some of the elements that we speak in the organization. Now, you might have heard vision of the company, the mission of the company, the goals of the company, the objectives of the company, and plan. Now, these five things, most of the time, they are confusing, or there is this tendency that each one of that would be used for one another. But when it comes to management, there is a clear distinction between these five. Okay. Now, what has been put up in your slide is the hierarchy of strategic intent, or the strategies it is. Now, for any organization to ensure that their industry or their firm or their business is able to realize its strategies, now we have this concept of hierarchy, and it includes the vision of the company, the mission of the company, the objective, goals, and plan. Now, the framework within which the business organization operates, and it adopts a predetermined direction to achieve their goals, is what has been provided by the strategy. So, now each one of this is a very huge topic, but to what extent it is necessary for us to understand and to know the difference between each, we shall discuss so much. Okay, now as you can see in the pyramid, now vision stands at the highest in the pyramid. Now this vision, it mainly reflects the.
Ma'am, we can see the slides.
Okay, there might be issue. Let me see it. Wait for 2 seconds. Now, here vision stands in the highest level of the hierarchy. Now, the vision of the organization is something which mirrors or reflects what the organization wants to be in the future. How is that it intends to see itself in the future? Or, in the words of management, it reflects the aspiration of the organization. So, definitely, when it sees itself in the future, it means that a vision of the company is defined as a long term goal of the organization. Or it also speaks about what the organization intends to do in the future. Or, in the layman's words, if we have to say, now, vision is something how the organization sees itself in the future ultimately, or it is what the organization wants to be. Therefore, this vision statement of the organization, it aligns every employee's work within the organizational long-term goal. Now, it is the first element that the organization focus upon and acts accordingly to other activities. Now, if I have to put it in a question, now vision is such a question which asks what I want my business to be. Now, after vision, we have mission. Now, speaking about the mission, it is the fundamental unique purpose. Now, this purpose, it sets business apart from other business or other firms. Now, it especially gives answer to the question why organization exists, and also it speaks about the path or the direction in which the organization is going to achieve its vision. So now to achieve the vision we need mission. So mission might be more in number, or in other words, when you compare mission and vision, the vision might be one, and to achieve this particular vision the organization might have five of the missions. And later on comes goals of the organization. Now goals of the organization, it hopes to accomplish what the organization want to do in a future period of time. Now, speaking about goals, these are tactical objectives that the organization's management defines to outline predictable future outcomes. And also, goals are something which especially speaks about the employees' efforts, how the efforts are expected from the side of employees. Now, to put it in simple words, the question answered by goal is what will get my business there? Now, we said vision statement. Vision statement is something we want to be in the future. So definitely there is a difference between what we are today and what we are going to be there tomorrow. Now this goal is nothing but it bridges the gap between these two. It speaks about what the what my business is and what will get my business to the other side of the bridge. Then comes the objective. Now objectives, these are the state specifically how the goals shall be achieved. Now objectives of the organization, definitely when we consider the time period, it is short term and medium term. Now even objectives plays very much integral role in formulating policies for business, and especially it plays an integral role in allocation of the organizational resource at right place. That is to tell, it does the work of right person at a right place and at a right time. And in the end of the pyramid we have plan. Now plan, it includes deciding about the future. Now deciding in the future, definitely we do it in advance. Now it helps to achieve the long term objectives of the firm and monitoring the strategies to achieve them. So that is what plan is. Now if you see in the either sides of the slide, you have the nature of all these strategies. Now as you go higher in the pyramid, the each of the strategy becomes more integrative. That is, the scope of each of the strategy is wider, It includes much more elements of the organization. Now, as you move down towards the pyramid, now each of the strategy becomes more and more specific. That is to tell, if you pick a plan, one plan would be specifically for doing one activity and only one. So as you move higher, now when you speak about the vision, it is very much integrative. Now one vision would include everything that the organization wants to do. Now what you can see in the right hand side of your slide is that as you move higher in the pyramid, the number of each of the strategy would be lesser and lesser. And as you move down towards the pyramid, the number of strategies that you would be having would be greater. So this is the basic thing that you had to know before we speak about the strategy. Now speaking about strategy, yes, as we discussed earlier, the concept of strategy, it is being borrowed by the military, and by adopting it from the knowledge and concept of military, it has been adopted to be used in business. Now, what the noted writers has to be speak about business strategy or have to suggest about adopting the concept was very much easy because the adaptation need not require too much of modification. It has been modest. Now that is to tell, what happens in military is something similar to that of what happens in business. But how it happens, let us see. Now in business, as in the military, the strategy, it bridges the gap between the policies and the tactics. Now, together, strategy and tactics, it bridges the gap between the ends that are to be achieved and the means that we have to achieve these ends. So, that is what has been shown in your slide. Now, you have means. Means is nothing but the resources that you have. And you have the ends, or ends is the aim that you want to fulfill, the any, or to tell the vision of the company might be the mission. Now that speaks about the ends. Now all these strategies, that is your vision, mission, all those we spoke, and the tactics, now these things, they bridge the gap between what you have and what is that you want to have. Now you'll have to deploy and employ all the strategies and tactics so that you can bridge this gap and reach the ends. Now, some of the language basics about the strategy we shall see. Now the strategy, it is the term which has its origin in the Greek language. Okay. Um, Now it comes from the word strategia in Greek. Now in Greek, strategia means generalship. Okay. Now where do we see this generalship? Now in the military, we can speak, we have heard about this word, general or generalship. So we also said that this concept of strategy we have adopted from military. Now in the military, when we speak about strategy, it often refers to maneuvering. Now maneuvering is something, we can tell it as using skillfully. So now in military, strategy often refers to maneuvering the troops. Troops is what? Troops is group of your soldiers. So maneuvering troops into position before the enemy is actually engaged in the war. So in this sense, strategy refers to the deployment of troops. Now once the enemy has been engaged, the attention shifts to tactics. So here the employment of troops is central. Now you heard what I said. You have troops, you have enemies. Now the deployment of troops is strategy. And once the enemy comes into the war, whatever we do, it refers to the tactics. Now substitute the word resource for troops and transfer this concept to the business world. So there you'll understand what strategy is all about. Now here enemies are nobody but the competitors that we would be facing in the business environment. So this strategy also refers to means by which policy is affected. Now there was a famous uh, Persian general and military theorist. Now this person was called as Karl Philipp Gottfried von Clausewitz. Now he is famously called as Karl von Clausewitz. Now this person, he was a Persian general and also a military theorist. Now he used to write and tell ideas about moral and political aspects in the military. Now he is the one person who said that strategy refers to the means by which policy is affected. Now it was a famous statement that the war is the continuation of political realization via other means. Now, given the century old military origin of strategy, it seems sensible to examine strategy with the military view. And for this purpose, there is no other better definition other than that has been given by B.H. Lindelhart. Okay, in the book that he has written called as Strategy, this person Lindelhart, he examines wars and battles from the time of ancient Greeks till World War II. Now, in his book, he concludes that the definition which was given by Clausewitz as regard to what is strategy as the art of employment of battles as a mean to gain the objective of war, it is seriously flawed, or it is wrong, in that this way of strategy intrudes upon policy and makes battle the only means of achieving strategic ends. And in writing this book or understanding the concept, Lindelhart also observes that Clausewitz later acknowledged these flaws and then points to what he views as wiser definition of strategy set forth by Moltke. Now, Moltke, he said that the practical adaptation of the means placed at a general's disposal to the attainment of the objective in view. So, in Moltke's formulation, military strategy is clearly a means to political ends. Now, do not go to you know think too much of this. Just understand how the origin was. Now you have much more definition as to what corporate strategy is. This is just how it all begin. Now the person that you can see in the slide is Carl von Clausewitz. Okay. Now, in the book that he has written, Lindelhard, he concludes his review of wars, policy, strategies, and tactics. Okay, at the end, he arrives at the definition of the strategy, which tells that strategy is nothing but the art of distributing and applying military means to fulfill the ends of the policy. Now, delete the word military from the Lindelhardt's definition, okay, and it makes it easy to exploit the concept of strategy to business world. So remove that. Now what the definition would be? The art of distributing and applying means to fulfill the ends of the policy. Now there we have something which reflects in the business world. So this would bring us to one of the people considered by many to be the father of strategic planning in this business world, and that is George Steiner. Now, according to George Steiner, before that, George Steiner, he was a professor of management and one of the founders of the California Management Review. Now, this person he is generally considered as the key figure in the origin and development of strategic planning. Okay, he had written the book called as Strategic Planning. Now it is close to how we can, if we have to put it in a simile, now it is close to being Bible on the subject of strategy or corporate strategy. Yet Steiner does not bother to define strategy except in the notes at the end of his book. Now, there he notes the strategy entered the management literature as a way of referring to what one did to counter a competitor's actual or predicated moves. Now, see how from military the strategy is moving towards business world. Now, first we said that it is all about achieving political ends. Later we spoke about applying the means to fulfill the ends to policy. Now here we start to speak about competitors and also taking strategies so that we can solve the problems that we would be facing because of the competitors. Now, Steiner also makes it clear that there is very little agreement as to the meaning of strategy in the business world. So, he uses many of the definition. Uh, the first one is he tells that strategy is that what top management does that is of great importance for the organization. The first thing he tells is that strategy is what the top management of the organization does, and it would be of great importance for the organization. And he also tells that strategy refers to the basic directional decision. Now that is to propose and speak about missions. Then he tells that strategy consists of the important actions which are necessary to realize all this direction. And he tells that strategy answers the question, two of the question. First is what should the organization be doing? Second is what are the ends we seek and how should we achieve them? Now the same thing we discussed under the meaning of strategy. That is what Steiner is trying to tell. Now Steiner was writing during the year 1979 and roughly The midpoint of the rise of strategic planning was during the same period. Now, perhaps the confusion surrounding strategy it contributed to the demise of strategic planning in the late 1980s. So, the rise and subsequent fall of strategic plan brings us to one of the greatest management thinker, that is Henry Mintzberg. Now, he's the one person who has been displayed in your PPT here. Okay. Now, according to Henry Mintzberg, he writes in his book The Rise and Fall of Strategic Planning, and it was written in the year 94. Okay, he points out that people use strategy in several different ways, and he tells that they use strategy as a plan or how a means of getting from here to there. Now, people also use strategy as a pattern in actions over time. For example, a company that regularly markets very expensive product and is using a high end strategy. Now, he also tells that strategy is a position. Now that it is reflects decision to offer particular products or services in particular market. Now he also tells that strategy is perspective. That is, it is a vision and direction. So Mintzberg argues that strategy emerges over time as intentions collide with and which accommodates a changing reality. So, one might start with a perspective and conclude that it calls for a certain position. Now, this is to be achieved by way of a carefully crafted plan. Now, with the eventual outcomes and strategy, it reflects in a pattern evident in decision and actions over time. Now, these words that Mintzberg uses. Now, it is supported by Kenneth Andrews. Now, Kenneth Andrews, he was a Harvard Business School professor, and for many years he was editor of the Harvard Business Review. Okay. Now, Kenneth Andrews presents the lengthy definition of the strategy, and he has spoken about this in his book, The Concept of Corporate Strategy. Now, this is the definition that you can take. It has been displayed in your PPT. He tells that corporate strategy is the pattern of decisions in a company that determines and reveals its objectives, the purpose or goals, and it produces the principal policy and plans for achieving those goals and defines the range of business the company is to pursue, the kind of economic and human organization it is or intends to be, and the nature of the economic and non-economic contribution it intends to make to its shareholders, employees, customers, and communities. Now, this is a detailed explanation of what corporate strategy is. Now, when you speak about pattern, here you have all those strategies that we spoke of. Now, all those strategies it determines as to tell how the company has to do it, and in telling how it has to do, it also speaks about or it reveals the objective, purpose, and goals, and because it has to come up with all these things, it also results in producing the policies and plans for achieving those goals. And also In this way, it defines the range of business or the different activities the organization has to do to pursue all this. And also, it speaks about what kind of organization will it be. It might be in terms of economics, or it might be in terms of human organization. Economic here represents the revenue. Okay, and also it speaks about how would it benefit to all its stakeholders. Now all those people mentioned, shareholders, employees, customers, they together are called as stakeholders. So this definition, it obviously anticipates Mintzberg's attention to pattern, plan and perspective that we just discussed. So Andrews, he also draws distinction between corporate strategy, which determines the business in which a company will be competing, and from that of business strategy, which defines the basis of competition for a given business. So Andrews, he also anticipated position as a form of strategy. Now, strategy as the basis for competition brings us to another Harvard Business School professor, that is Michael Porter. And there we shall end what this strategy is all about. Okay. Now, in 96, Harvard Business Review article and in an earlier book, Michael Porter argues that competitive strategy is nothing but it is all about being different. Now he adds that it means it is consciously choosing different set of activities so that the organization is able to deliver a unique mix of value to its customer. Now it has to be unique because it has to gain competitive advantage in the business world. Now in short, Porter is arguing that strategy is about competitive position or about differentiating your company in the eyes of the customer. Not only that, you should always remember that it is about adding value through a mix of activities, which is different from those that are being used by the competitors. So, this was what was written in 96. Now, in the earlier book, Porter defines competitive strategy as a combination of the ends for which the firm is striving, the means by which it is seeking to get there. Now, this is nothing but what we had discussed when we saw that picture of a bridge where we had means, ends, bridging the gap, strategy, and tactics. Now, Porter tells ends are the goals and the means are the policies. So, thus we can see that Porter seems to embrace strategy as both plan and position also. But remember one thing, when it comes to Porter, uh, he writes about competitive strategy and he is not speaking about strategy in general. So here we have what is corporate strategy, we spoke what is business strategy, we spoke what is strategy in general also. Strategy in general is nothing but you have means, you have ends, and how you reach it. Now, when we tell corporate strategy, it determines the business in which or this corporate strategy, it determines the business in which a company will compete, and business strategy defines the basis of competition for a given business. So this is all about the definition of strategy that we had to know. Now see here, what Porter spoke, what Mintzberg and Michael Porter spoke, that has been represented in the right hand side of your PPT. That you have pattern, you have perspective, you have plan, you have position. Okay, and what are these? Has been explained by Mintzberg. Okay, and one thing that is more here is that is ploy. Now this ploy, now these definitions were given in 1996, that is almost 25 to 26 earlier before or before 3 decades. Now with the rising business competition, things have changed. Now we also speak about ploy. So what is this ploy? Now ploy, if I have to give a dictionary meaning, ploy speaks about the cunning planning or action designed to turn a situation to one's own advantage. Now we agree or not, having ploy is also important in today's business world. And all these things we already discussed. What is a plan, what is a pattern. Now plan is nothing but a detailed proposal for doing something and thereby achieve it. What is pattern? Pattern is a repeated action. Yes, a repeated action which we know, so it can be a repetitive decorative action. So what is perspective? It is a particular attitude towards a way of something, or perspective can be as simple as point of view. And we have position. Position is particular way in which someone or something is placed and how it is being arranged. So what is this strategy all about? Now we have to speak in terms of business world, isn't it? So what is this strategy all about? So we now you might have a range of questions like, is it a plan, or does strategy refers to how we will obtain the ends we seek, or is it just a position taken, or just as military forces might take the high ground prior to engaging the enemy, might a business take the position of low cost provider? Now this had seen we had seen this particular real example when Geo had introduced free of cost internet and call service, so that it can gain, so that it can gain market. It had introduced it in low cost provider, zero cost it has provided, and thereby it had gained the share in the market. Now, strategy can also be, or does strategy refers to perspective, to the view one takes of matters, and to the purpose, direction, decisions, and actions which stream from the view. Now, lastly, does strategy refers to pattern in our decision and actions? So that is to tell, for example, does repeatedly copying a competitor's new product offerings signals a me too strategy? Just what is strategy? Now, to answer all this question, or to answer what strategy is all this. Now, strategy, it is a perspective. Now, strategy, it is a position. Strategy, it is a plan. Strategy is a pattern. It is also a ploy nowadays. So, it is the bridge between policy or high order goals on the one hand and tactics or the concrete actions on the other. So, this strategy and tactics together work so that they can straddle the gap between ends and means. So, having said so much about strategy, in short, strategy is a term which refers to a complex web of thoughts. It includes ideas, it includes insights, the experience, the goals, expertise, memories, perception, and even expectations. Now, all this provides what we can call as general guidance for actions in pursuit of some goal. If you have to speak in management terms, all this are general guidance for specific actions in pursuit of particular ends. Now, aims we speak as ends and resources we speak as means here. So, strategy basically is it is a person's or a company's or one's course which are the journey we imagine, and at the same time, it is the course we steer our ship. So, the trip we actually make is nothing but strategy. Now, even when we are embarking on a voyage of discovery with no particular destination in mind, the voyage will always has a purpose. It will always have an outcome, an end to be kept in view. So, strategy then has no existence apart from the end sought. So, it is a general framework which provides guidance for actions that are to be taken, and at the same time, it is shaped by the actions that would be taken by the organization. So, this means that necessary precondition for formulating strategy is clear and it is widespread understanding of the ends to be obtained. Now, without these ends in view, action is purely tactical and can quickly degenerate into nothing more than a flailing about. Now, having said so many things about means and ends and this strategy and tactics, remember where there is no ends in the view for any of the organization, whether it is small or big, strategies will still exist and they are still operational and even highly effective. But for an individual or unit, not for the organization as a whole. That is something we'll have to remember. So, the risk of not having a set of company wide ends clearly in view would include, some of the missed opportunities, or it might result in fragmented and wasted efforts, or, working at cross purpose, and also in warfare within the organization. Now, we had spoken about span of management, right, in our earlier classes. So, one of the comment that has been given by Lionel Urwix, we can apply it here. That is, when he tells there is nothing which rots morale more quickly and more completely than the feeling that those in the authority do not know their own minds. So this is what happens when the organization does not know its strategy or it does not know what it wants to achieve. So the next is the practical question. How is that strategy would be done? Or how does one determine or articulate or form and communicate company wide ends, or how does one ensures understanding and obtain commitment to all these ends? Now, the answer is that the ends to be obtained are determined through discussion and debates regarding definitely the company's future in light of what situation is it in the present. Now, even the SWOT analysis is conducted based on the current perception. Now, SWOT analysis is simple work. What is SWOT analysis? It speaks about strengths of the company, weaknesses of the company, opportunities the company would be facing, and the threat that it will have to face. SWOT is SWOT. So even this can be done in understanding what company is right now and what it wants to achieve. So the ends settled, one are articulated in the plain language, which would be free from flowery words and political spin. Now the risk of misdirection is too great to tolerate unfettered wordsmithing. That is to tell, whatever plan, vision, mission should be, it should be simple enough, concrete enough, and it should include the everything the organization wants to intend. It should not be full of mm, flowery words, and it should not include political spin it. Moreover, the ends are communicated regularly, they are communicated repeatedly through a variety of channels and avenues in the organization. Now, there is no end to their communication. Now, understanding these things shall be ensured via discussion, or it shall be deliberated, it shall be in the way of dialogue, or even in the way of discussion in the organization, or even in the way of debate. Now, in a word through conversation is also possible. So, these conversations are liberally sprinkled with examples. That is to tell, for instances or what ifs you can use. Now, initially, the chief executive officer in a corporate world, he bears the burden of this conversation with the staffs. Now, as more people come to understand and commit to the ends being sought, this communications burden can be shared with others. However, the chief executive officer, he can never completely re- relinquish out of it. So the CEO is the keeper of the vision and periodically must be seen reframing it. Now ultimately, the ends that are sought, it can be expressed via scorecard or some other device for measuring and publicly reporting on company performance. So individual effort can then be assessed in the light of these same ends. That is to tell, for an example, you know, that a company has these ends in mind. Maybe it wants to have improved customer services and satisfaction. It wants to reduce cost. It wants to increase productivity, and it wants to increase revenues from new product and service. Now it is a simple and undeniable matter for the managers to periodically ask the following questions of the employees reporting them as to what have you done to improve customer service, what have you done to improve customer satisfaction, what have you done to reduce cost, what have you done to increase productivity, what have you done to increase revenues from new products and so product and service. These questions are simple, but they are undeniably relevant matter for managers. They'll have to ask it time and again. Now, all this are how the strategy shall be implemented. Strategy is everything. It is the complex vision of the company till the simple plan of the company. Now, in doing this is what the functions of the management that we spoke of, it comes. Now you can understand, yes, each element we named it differently, we discussed it differently. But that time we also said that everything happens together. That is what this is all about. Now things in management, it happens together. All that we studied, all that we discussed, it happens in each and every activity. Now a simple activity might be like, you know, we'll have to start producing 50 more units of product maybe. Now everything shall be there in that, right from planning until controlling and all these strategies. It includes everything. Now that is how it works in the management. Yes, now it is almost 50 minutes.